Good afternoon, and welcome to today's discussion between the Herald and Superintendent of Grand Forks Public Schools, Dr. Terry Brenner. I'm Corey Wenzel, publisher of the Herald. As has been the case with all of these events, this is being broadcast live on grandforksherald.com. It will be available there for later viewing shortly after the conclusion. Today's conversation continues the Herald series of COVID-related discussions, which we hope will answer important questions as the community deals with the pandemic. Dr. Brenner, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Corey. Happy to be here as always.
So the traditional format that we've been doing is we usually get through this in about 15, 20, or 25 minutes. I'll just start it off. We've had a few questions for you today. A reader asks, could you ask Dr. Brenner if the antibacterial wipes the school is using are effective against a virus?
Thank you for the question. Yes, they are. The wipes supplied by the school district do have a positive or negative effect on the virus, however you want to spin that. To that end, I think it's important for our listeners and viewers to know that just within the first 2 to 3 school days, we went through $20,000 worth of those wipes. So that means a couple of things. Our staff and students are being hyper vigilant about cleaning off desktop, tabletop surfaces, all surfaces throughout the building. But we also know we can't sustain that from a budgetary perspective. So our buildings and grounds department have been exploring, and they've come up with a spray solution, something that we can manufacture here with the right ingredients that takes care of the virus, but it's not harmful to the skin of the people who are applying that. So between custodians, teachers, support staff, everybody, again, to use that term, has been hyper vigilant in cleaning off tabletops, desktops, etc., along with door handles. And I was in schools last week, visited 8 schools, and what I saw just about before every doorknob and after every doorknob was hand sanitizer. So really, the CDC guidelines that have been implemented are being closely followed. And I just shout out kudos to students and staff for their work in containing the spread.
Was there, and a follow-up to that question, was there a budget set aside for that? And how are we doing on that budget? You said it was around $20,000 already. Where does that stand on what you thought that would be?
Well, we knew that it was going to be in the hundreds of thousands, particularly with some new equipment that we have coming in. Some of that equipment is going to fall under a grant. Some of the equipment is going to fall under a gift that was just provided to us by the GE Foundation through the Greater Grand Forks Foundation itself. But we have budgeted for lots of PPE. Do we have room in the budget to budget for that? The answer is no. So we are certainly optimistic and hopeful that either the federal government or the state legislature will be coming through with some additional funds, because it's not just Grand Forks specific. This is across the country, and we're really, really concerned about the ending fund balance at the end of this year.
How did the first week of school go? Were there issues that arose with masks or people breaking any of the rules?
When we first started talking about face coverings and masks, one of the high school principal concern was who's going to police this? When we talk about hoods and hats and how that has gone, and that's really, by the way, pretty much gone to the wayside. I have to say, again, back to my school visits last week, I would say that 95% of the people are wearing their masks 95% of the time, or maybe it's 100% of the people are wearing their masks 95% of the time, even when they have some wiggle room, when there's plenty of distance between students and between staff. People are masked up and they're taking this seriously. And to that end, Central has a great tagline this year, Central High School, stay apart so we can stay together. And I think that's the mantra that we're gonna carry as a school district this year. We're just fortunate that we've been able to be back in a face-to-face model, and our 1,300 students who are involved in distance learning. I mean, that's a whole nother piece, and we don't want to forget about the 14 secondary teachers and the 20 plus elementary teachers who are providing distance learning to our 1,300 students at home. So far, overall, it has gone well. And I will say that the vibe at each of the campuses, if you can see smiling eyes because everybody is masked up, that's what I saw in my visits last week, and I anticipate seeing that again this week. So as long as we're in session, things after school can continue like athletics. So we just want to make sure that everybody continues to follow the rules and regulations and practices that we put in place, because it's for everybody else's safety. It's not for mine, it's for everybody else.
Okay. How many confirmed cases in the school system at the moment, students and staff?
I can respond to the staff. We have 12 confirmed adult cases, COVID positive, and with the close contacts associated with those folks, there are about another 45 or 46 out. So, we're in that mid 50 plus adults being out. And we knew going into the school year, based on my conversation with superintendents who have already been in session about a week before us, that's going to be our biggest challenge. Staying in a face-to-face model is keeping enough adults in place. We're exploring some alternatives. We've been given some latitude from the governor and the Department of Public Instruction to look at our student teachers to be certified substitute teachers, kind of fast tracking some alt licenses for substitute teachers. That's going to be the hole that we're going to have to fill. I don't think it's going to be the absence of a number of students. It's going to be the absence of adults. As far as the student numbers, all of the reported cases go to the Grand Forks Public Health, and then they employ their contact tracers to work with our schools on identifying who are the close contacts relative to the students who have tested positive. So I don't have those numbers. Can I confirm that we have students testing positive? Absolutely. Can I confirm that we have some close contact students? Absolutely, I can. Not only from the instructional day, but also within athletics. We've had those cases as well. So I'm not trying to hide information, I'm not trying to skirt the information, but what I can say is public health has those numbers. And really, to get public health to drill down, they don't even drill it down to the campus level. They have county-wide student data regarding COVID positives and close contacts.
So I would assume it would be in an age cohort like they're doing all the others as well. Is that right?
Yes, that would be correct, Corey.
Okay. And then a follow-up on that, is it unique in Grand Forks or Grand Forks County that you're unable to provide the numbers, or is this a statewide situation?
Well, I don't know that we're unique, and I'm not sure what other school districts are reporting out. I've certainly, heard on the news, X school in Fargo reported a case. And I suppose if public health is able to provide that for us, saying you do have a positive case at Red River or a positive case at Central, we would announce that along with them. Okay. We just want to make sure that, from a privacy perspective, that a student is not identifiable with releasing that information. The other thing about that is students talk. And students talk to each other. Students self-disclose to a coach, for example, saying, hey, I tested positive, I won't be at practice. That's how we know some of that information, and then that's turned over to public health for the tracing process.
Okay. Another follow-up, you talked about fast tracking substitute teachers. What needs to happen to make that occur? I mean, where do we stand with that, and how close are we to getting that, or is it just even in the conversational phase, or are we steps beyond already?
Yeah, we're steps beyond, and we're already working with UND because to have an alternative teaching license, I believe it's 30 to 35 credits is all a person would need. So we could actually look at students who are on the teacher education track at UND, at Mayville, those close universities to us. And as long as they've got enough credits, we can get them an alt license. We want to be careful and be sensitive with some of the ages of the students and where they're appropriately placed. Probably wouldn't want to put a 19-year-old sophomore in college in a high school senior class, for example. But there will be plenty of opportunities for them to be a part of our process. And that's not just for substitute teachers, that's for substitute paras as well. So they're going to be able to fill that niche. And we're just optimistic that we're going to get several more people in our pool.
What still needs to be done to make it happen?
I think we're awfully close. All they have to, the people who need their certification will be working with the Education Standards and Practices Board to get that alt license. So it's really incumbent upon them to move their paperwork at a fast pace electronically with ESPB.
Okay. Regarding free lunches until December, how does that impact the lunch program, and what does it exactly mean financially for Grand Forks Public Schools? This person says, I'm guessing it's a good thing, but does it create hoops for the school to jump through later on?
Well, it's a great benefit for our families who are in economic hardships. And we know that we're feeling that across the community. So from that perspective, it's a blessing. It really is. So everybody, whether they qualify or don't qualify, or they're somewhere in the middle, is going to have a free meal basically through the holiday break in December. The flip side of that is if we have parents not completing their food application form, for free or reduced price meals, we won't have that data to support to the Department of Public Instruction, which then goes on to the federal government, which then provides all of the title dollar reimbursement. So, and we're in the millions, we're in that 3 million mark with federal dollars. So that could have a negative impact if parents don't fill out the form. So we're going to be vigilant with our parents, saying, even though it's a free meal, it's a free breakfast and a free lunch, through December, we would still really like you to complete the form, because it would have a negative impact on us financially.
Has the district instituted certain rules regarding students posting photos or information on places like Twitter or social media? This person says, as an example, a student in Georgia got in trouble a few weeks back when she posted photos to the internet showing students not conforming to mask rules.
We have our acceptable use policy that falls under technology. We have our bullying policy, our anti-harassment policy. But as long as students are respectfully following those guidelines, there's nothing that would prohibit a student from taking a picture of students in the hallways, for example, or at events, after school events. So there's nothing punitive that's going to be coming from the superintendent regarding students taking pictures. And I know the pushback that happened in that other state that you mentioned, really just showed congregations of students who weren't masked up, shoulder to shoulder, up and down the hallways. You probably won't see that in our schools, because at the secondary level, at the high school level, we have a hybrid model. So students are alternating from day one to day two, which really clears the hallways. And I was at Central and Red River last week during passing time, and it does feel very different when you only have half the student population in those corridors. So, so that's a long way of saying there's nothing that precludes any student from posting a comment, as long as it's acceptable, and posting a picture as long as that's acceptable. The only thing that students probably need to worry about a little bit is we do have parents who sign a consent or don't sign a consent form for their students' photo to be used in a yearbook and social media, et cetera, et cetera. So they will have to be cautious of that, because they might be taking a picture of somebody who's not allowing that based on lack of consent.
Okay. This person says, I haven't heard much about students and the transportation system. Have adjustments been made with the bus provider and the children who ride the bus to school?
Yes, great question. We've worked through this, the transportation routes. We've developed several scenarios. And when I say we have a partnership with Dietrich. They are the contracted service to move our kids to and from schools. Early on, when we surveyed parents, survey number 1 and survey number 2 this summer, we asked them about transportation, really leading them to believe that this was going to be a difficult thing to pull off when we could only have 25 to 30% capacity on buses. And knowing what Dietrich's bus fleet is, it's one thing to have enough buses, it's another thing to have enough drivers. So a large majority of our parents said they would be able to transport. Not all, but a large majority. Well, since then, we've probably had more riders than what parents indicated in those surveys. So we're running, for example, we're running some multiple routes between schools and in neighborhoods. So there might be 2 to 3 bus routes in a morning and 2 to 3 bus routes at the end of the day. So that means either somebody's getting on pretty early and getting to school early, or they're getting home rather late. Not that they're sitting on the bus, but they're waiting for a bus. So transportation continues to be a challenge for us. Chris Arnold, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, has looked at all sorts of options, conversations with the city about how we might be able to partnership with them, along with Dietrich, and what might be available even on the east side of the river. And right now, all I will say is busing is a challenge, and if parents don't want to have their student getting on early or arriving home late, then the alternative is to, carpool, see what you can work out with a neighbor. And as long as they're all within that cohort group and masking up, then that's a pretty good alternative.
Okay. The last question asks about sports, and maybe we'll expand on that after the actual question here. So the sports season seemed to be going well. Have there been any hiccups or issues during the first couple of weeks? Have there been confirmed cases among Grand Forks School District athletes?
Well, first of all, I just want to say how proud I am of all of our coaches who have, in our 7 sports, who have broken down their practices to keep cohorts of students, athletes together. In the event that one tests positive, then it's easy to identify who the close contacts are. So they really set a nice standard for us coming back into the classroom. So we've learned a lot from our coaches who started in early August. I'd say our biggest challenge right now is when a student athlete is tested positive, and that has been the case in a couple of situations. That athlete will go directly to a coach, and that information may not get to the high school office, but it gets to public health. And then suddenly there's this lag time between the school being notified, even though the coach knows. And then you've got FERPA issues and who can say what and who should know what. So the contact tracing, and this is no fault of anybody's. This is just how rapidly things happen, particularly when they happen at night or they happen over a weekend. Those are the challenges that we're having with athletics right now. We've had to shut down practice in a couple of situations for 2 to 3 days until all the contact tracing could take place. But to my knowledge, well, for sure, we have not lost a varsity event yet because of COVID. But there may have been a situation where we've not played a JV contest as a result of some of the team members being in quarantine. One of our other challenges that we have, and I really want to say this with all due respect to our public, and this is to our parents, this is to our community, and also this is to our students. And by the way, students will be receiving a video message from me today, students in middle school and high school. We are issuing 2 tickets per student athlete for immediate family members. That's pretty easy to control in a Central or Red River high school gymnasium or a middle school gymnasium. It's when you get to the Outer Banks, we have less control over what happens at a cross-country meet at Lincoln Park, even though we're saying this is how many tickets you can get. Tennis is a little more challenging that way. Swimming, we can control that. Actually, we can't get anybody into the central pool to watch swimming, so we're working on live streaming that. But knowing that this week is our crosstown rivalry week between Central and Red River, we know this is an emotional week. We know this is a bragging rights week. We know more students want to get into the games, and again, we can control the indoor environments. But when it comes to the Cushman Classic on Friday night, when the Knights and the Rough Riders, play in this football game, if only 2 tickets are issued per family, we know what's going to happen outside of the track, outside of the gated area, because we've seen it already where students are standing shoulder to shoulder, not necessarily wearing masks, and that's just not a good thing. So my message to students today is imploring them to be responsible, because they will be the gatekeepers of whether our sports seasons continue. And that's not to shut down a sports season because people are showing up and standing where they're not supposed to be standing. Our sports seasons will shut down if we have a major COVID spread between and among a team. And if we lose our fall sports, who knows what's going to happen with winter sports. So they can be really, really helpful, really, really respectful in staying away from the game. The game will be live streamed by the school district, the football game that is on Friday night. So there is an opportunity to watch it. It's just not the same as being in the stands.
So you mentioned a phenomenon that I witnessed when I went to a Central game a couple of weeks ago, where I saw that, outside of the fence, there were many, many students. Ironically, and to their credit, they generally were masked up, but they were shoulder to shoulder. So that's what your video message will address. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's part of what it will address, and we're going to take some measures to minimize any kind of traffic that will be able to get in and around those areas. And again, we're trying to do this in a respectful way. We don't want to do it in a punitive way. We just want to make sure that everybody is doing their due diligence so our fall sports can continue and actually conclude their seasons. The other thing is, if the spread moves to a level where we can't, or the color-coded chart in Grand Forks moves from orange to red, then we're in complete distance learning and we don't have athletics or activities going on.
Okay. Dr. Brenner, as so often is the case with reporters, we think of things as the rest of the interview goes on. I wrote a note down, and it goes back to student numbers one more time. I'd like to just ask you, had said you're unable to say. I guess I would respectfully ask you, whose decision is that? Who said you can't say? Is that a district? Was that the board? Was that the state superintendent of schools? Was that Department of Health? What keeps you from saying how many students have the virus?
Well, I signed a non-disclosure agreement with the North Dakota Department of Health that indicates I would not share any information, regarding student numbers that could be perceived as identifiable. Now, it'd be one thing to say we've got, hypothetically, we've got 4 cases at Red River, not really identifiable. But to say we've got 4 cases at a small elementary school, that would be identifiable. So I'm just trying to do my due diligence. And what I will share with you, Corey, and with the listeners is if there's something that pivots or changes where I can offer those numbers per campus, as long as we know it's not identifiable information, I will share that.
Okay. Back to the Cushman Classic. You said it's going to be live streamed. Can you give us some information about that? Where will we be able to find it? It's unique, of course, that the school district is taking this up, but I would assume these are steps that are being taken to try and mitigate any other spread. I mean, but also it's kind of a sign of the times. A lot of schools are doing this anyway. So can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, you can. The public can count on our YouTube live feed off of our website. If anything changes, we'll make sure that there's a media release. We'll probably do a media release anyway, just to make sure people know where they can find it.
Okay. Very good. Exciting times. Cushman Classic Week and all of the rivalry week is fun. And so if anybody hasn't witnessed that or been a part of that, they really should pay attention and watch your live stream of that, because it is something to see. And unfortunately, it'll be without the crowd, which adds so much of the fun to it. Anybody who has seen that in the past, I mean, it's thrilling to see the crowd that comes and the cheering, and it's just a lot of fun. So it's sad that that's not going to happen, but it's really good news that the game is still being played and that you're able to live stream it. So good work on that.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Once again, this event has been live broadcast and it'll be available for later viewing on grandforksherald.com. Dr. Brenner, thank you for participating. We hope to keep these going in any way we can. And so have a good day and thanks again.
Thank you. And I'm happy to come back. Thank you, Corey.